there is a country nestled right in the heart of Europe, where cobblestone streets still wind past castles hundreds of years old, where small beer taverns are sometimes even older than many modern nations, and where the people have topped the world in average beer consumption for more than 3 decades. That's the Czech Republic. But cheap beer and a fairy tale Prague are only the surface. Czechia is also one of the least religious countries in the world, and yet the streets remain clean, society runs in orderly fashion, and the level of safety catches more than a few travelers off guard. Here people don't talk much about faith. They believe in responsibility in law, and in respecting other people's space. On the trams running through Prague, you might spot women with an elegant beauty that's understated rather than showy. In the beer halls, strangers can sit side by side for hours without any need for elaborate small talk. A country where beer is sometimes cheaper than bottled water. A capital city with a street so narrow it needs a traffic light just to keep 2 people from meeting head-on. And a nation that once split itself in 2, almost without a single gunshot or drop of blood spilled. But behind that peaceful surface lie things far stranger still. From the origin of the word robot to customs that leave travelers puzzled to spa towns that once appeared in James Bond films. The Czech Republic isn't just beautiful like a fairy tale. Real life here is even more surprising than anything you'd see on a postcard. And that journey begins with something that catches the attention of almost everyone the moment they first set foot in this country. Part 1. Beauty that needs no showing off. What catches many travelers' eyes the moment they first step onto the streets of Prague is Czech women. They tend to be tall, with harmonious features and an elegant sense of style. But that appeal rarely comes from elaborate outfits or heavy makeup. Czech women usually choose simplicity, a well-fitted coat, shoes comfortable enough for walking those cobblestone streets, and a natural confidence no need to try to become the center of attention. But if we only talk about looks, we'd be missing the most notable part. In modern Czech society, women are present in almost every field: education, healthcare, science, business, and politics. They're independent, straightforward, and generally don't think much of overly showy flattery. To make a good impression here, sincerity matters far more than flash. Perhaps that's exactly what makes Czech women's beauty so distinctive. Not loud, not trying to draw attention, but the more you observe, the harder it is to forget. Still, the beauty on the streets isn't even the most surprising thing for travelers, because the moment you step into a nearby pub, you might discover a very Czech paradox: a glass of beer can sometimes cost the same as, or even less than, a bottle of water. Part 3. Czech ideas that change the world. Looking at Prague. Today it's easy to assume the Czech Republic is a land that lives only in its past. But behind the red rooftops and ancient towers lies a people who once produced ideas far ahead of their time. In 1920, writer Karel Čapek introduced the word robot in his play Ruar. The word comes from robota, meaning forced hard labor. A small word that first appeared on a Czech stage, later became a shared term across the entire world of technology. Czechs also had a hand in creating the modern soft contact lens. Chemist Otto Victorla famously built a simple spinning device out of a children's construction set to test his first lenses at home. Even the familiar sugar cube carries a Czech signature. It was first produced in Dacis in the 19th century after Juliana Rad asked her husband to find a way to divide sugar into smaller, safer, more convenient pieces. The robot, the contact lens, the sugar cube, things we encounter in everyday life, all carry a piece of this small country's ingenuity. But the most famous Czech invention of all didn't happen in a laboratory. It happened on the map of Europe, when one country split into two separate nations with almost no shots fired at all. Part 4. The breakup without a single shot. On January 1st, 1993, Czechoslovakia officially vanished from the map. No war, no bloodshed, no streams of people fleeing their homeland. After years of political and economic differences, Czech and Slovak leaders chose to sit down, negotiate, and separate peacefully. The event became known as the Velvet Divorce. Assets were divided, new borders were drawn. Two independent nations were born, yet people on both sides could still meet, work, and maintain relationships that had spanned generations. Perhaps the most memorable part isn't that a country split in two. It's how they accepted their differences, let go of each other, and moved forward without turning people who once shared a home into enemies. But that peaceful past doesn't mean Czechs are always soft-spoken. Just step into a restaurant or strike up a conversation with a local, and you'll quickly discover they're known for a bluntness that can sometimes leave travelers a little thrown off. Part 5. Honesty without the sugarcoating. Czechs rarely beat around the bush. If the food isn't good, they might just say so. If they disagree, they won't force a smile to please you. For travelers, that coolness can sometimes feel standoffish. But most of the time, it isn't rudeness, it's honesty. Czechs don't place much value on social niceties. They can stay silent on the tram, rarely strike up conversation with strangers, and keep their distance on a first meeting. But once you become friends, that relationship tends to be genuine and long-lasting. Here, people don't need to say much to prove they care. A promise kept showing up at the right moment can sometimes mean more than 100 pretty words. And it's that same practicality that has shaped a distinctive society, one where most people place little faith in religion, yet life still runs on responsibility and mutual respect. Part 6. No religion, but not without faith. The Czech Republic is one of the least religious countries in Europe. Many people don't go to church, don't pray every day, and don't let religion dictate how they live. But that doesn't mean they believe in nothing. Czechs place their faith in the law, personal responsibility, and respect for others. They do the right thing not necessarily out of fear of some invisible punishment, but because they understand that freedom only exists when everyone knows their own limits. Of course, Czech society isn't perfect, but the streets remain safe, life remains orderly, and kindness still shows up in the most ordinary of actions. Perhaps what's worth reflecting on isn't whether they believe in God, but that a society can still hold on to decency even when that belief isn't expressed through rituals. And amid a country that lives fairly rationally, Czechs reserve an almost fanatical love for something else entirely: ice hockey. Part 7. When the whole country turns to the ice rink. If you want to see Czechs at their most emotionally unguarded, come watch a major hockey game. When the national team takes the ice, these normally reserved people become someone else entirely. Town squares fill with jerseys, flags blanket the stands, and every goal can send an entire city into an uproar. For Czechs, hockey isn't just a sport. It's tied to memory, pride, and moments when the nation wanted to prove itself to the world. Especially against major rivals, the game no longer feels like it's happening only on the ice. Every collision, every save, carries the emotions of millions of people. Football is still popular in Czechia, but hockey is where you can most easily watch a normally quiet people rise together, embrace, and belt out the national anthem. Still, the Czech spirit isn't found only in roaring stadiums. It also lives on in peaceful little towns where hot water rising from the earth once drew king's artists, and even a certain James Bond. Part 8. the town where time moves slowly. In the west of the Czech Republic lies a place that seems built for people to slow down. That's Karlovy Vary, the famous spa town known for its brightly colored buildings nestled in a valley. Centuries ago, nobles, artists, and powerful figures came here to take the cure. Visitors today still carry the town's distinctive little cups, strolling unhurried through old colonnades and sipping the warm mineral water that rises from the earth. But Karlovy Vary isn't just about spas. The city's elegant old-world beauty even appeared in the James Bond film Casino Royale, standing in for a mysterious Montenegro. What makes this place memorable isn't its luxury. It's the sense that time itself slows down amid drifting steam, quiet streets and footsteps echoing beneath old archways. But deeper within Czechia's ancient cities lies something far stranger still. A room where every wall chandelier and coat of arms is decorated with human bones. Part 9. The church decorated with human bones beneath a small chapel in Kutná Hora lie the remains of tens of thousands of people. Bones cover the walls, arranged into coats of arms, and strung together into a strange chandelier hanging in the middle of the room. The place is called the Sedlec ossuary, but it wasn't built to spread fear. When the cemetery became overcrowded after plagues and wars, old remains were brought into the chapel and arranged into decorative works. In that cold, quiet space, people suddenly grasp a very simple truth, rich or poor. In the end, everyone returns to the same place. Sedlec doesn't just send a chill down visitors' spines. It forces them into silence and into thinking about life itself. But the Czech Republic still has one more spot so narrow that people actually need a traffic light just to avoid bumping into each other. Part 10. The alley with a traffic light tucked away in Prague's old town is a passage so narrow that two people can barely avoid each other. It sits beside the Vltava restaurant, roughly half a meter wide, squeezed between two ancient walls. The strangest part is that there's a traffic light at each end. Before stepping in, you have to press a button and wait for the green light. Otherwise, two people walking in opposite directions could get stuck right in the middle of the alley. Many travelers call it Prague's narrowest street. But in truth, it's more of an old emergency exit than a proper street. It only takes a few seconds to cross. And yet, in the middle of a vast city, this tiny passage is exactly what draws millions of curious visitors. And Prague's strangeness isn't confined to the space between its walls. Right beneath the city flows a river carrying centuries of history, memory, and beauty. Part 11. The river that holds Prague's soul. Prague wouldn't be Prague without the Vltava. The river flows quietly through the city, reflecting red rooftops, old bell towers, and the Charles Bridge, which has stood for more than 6 centuries. In the morning, mist drifts over the water. As night falls, the lights of Prague Castle scatter into golden ripples across the river. But the Vltava isn't just responsible for the capital's beauty. It has witnessed wars, changes of regime, and violent floods. The city has transformed again and again, yet the river keeps flowing, carrying the memories of generations of Czechs. Composer Bedřich Smetana once turned the Vltava's journey into the symphonic poem Má vlast, My Homeland. So that, whenever the melody plays, Czechs don't just hear music, they hear their homeland. And along the banks of that poetic river, Prague holds on to a very different kind of symbol, a wall that once turned music into the voice of freedom. Part 12. The wall that couldn't be silenced. In the middle of Prague stands a wall covered in color messages and images of John Lennon. After his death in 1980, young Czechs began painting messages of peace and freedom. Here, things that had been restricted under the communist regime. Authorities painted over it again and again. But by the next morning, the words would reappear. The more it was covered up, the louder the wall spoke. Today, the Lennon Wall has become a famous destination, but behind its vivid splashes of color lies the memory of a generation that used music and a few strokes of paint to push back against silence. And that spirit of freedom isn't confined to the wall alone. It also lives on in customs, all their own ones, sometimes strange enough to leave foreigners completely puzzled. Part 13. The custom that leaves travelers puzzled during Easter. Czech men traditionally carry small braided willow whips called a pomlázka and use them to give women a symbolic light tap. In return, they receive decorated egg sweets or a small shot of liquor. The custom traces back to an old belief that spring willow branches bring health and vitality. Today, most people see it as light-hearted family fun, though the tradition still sparks plenty of debate, especially among younger generations. To outsiders, the scene can be pretty baffling. But in Czechia, it shows a modern country that still holds on to ancient traditions, sometimes playful, sometimes controversial, but always carrying a story from the past. And after all these strange and wonderful details, one final question remains. Is real life in the Czech Republic really as dreamy as it looks on the surface? Part 14. Not a fairy tale, but enough to dream about. The Czech Republic isn't a perfect paradise. Prague is dealing with rising housing costs. Winters are long and short on sunlight. Locals can come across as cold, and famous cities are seeing more and more tourists. But in return, there's convenient public transport streets that are relatively safe, a stable healthcare system, and a pace of life that isn't overly rushed. Czechs don't try to turn life into a performance. They work, meet friends over a glass of beer, walk through old streets, and find joy in the most ordinary things. Maybe that's the real beauty of this country. Not flashy, not perfect, but peaceful enough to make people want to stay. After this journey, the Czech Republic is no longer just Prague, cheap beer, or beautiful women. It's the birthplace of the word robot. It's a country that once split in two without a single gunshot, its town squares erupting over hockey, and walls that once spoke for an entire generation. Czechs can be a people of few words, not especially open with strangers, and rarely ones to wear their emotions on their sleeve. But behind that cool exterior is a society that values truth, responsibility, and freedom. The Czech Republic isn't trying to convince the world it's perfect. It simply lives quietly in its own way among old castles, the Vltava River, and pubs that have stood for generations. Maybe it's exactly because it isn't trying to impress that this small country ends up so hard to forget. So what about you? What surprised you most about the Czech Republic? And if you had the chance, would you want to live there even just once?